In 2024, the landscape of Mafia bosses is still alive and kicking, with powerful figures pulling strings from behind the scenes. These figures are not just names, they're powerful players in a dangerous game filled with violence, wealth, and ruthless ambition. Figures whose influence stretches across continents and whose operations defy the law. This is Black Mafia, also known as the Philadelphia Black Mafia, PBM. A Philadelphia-based African-American organization crime syndicate whose organization began in the 1960s as a relatively small criminal collective in South Philadelphia. From holding up neighborhood crap games to dealing with illegal drug businesses, drug trafficking, to burglary and armed robbery, and eventually consolidating power and controlling a large portion of criminal activity in various African-American neighborhoods throughout Philadelphia in the early 1980s, these organizations have evolved dramatically over the decades. In 2024, we see a blend of traditional mafia structures and modern criminal enterprises that leverage technology and global connections. Stick around as we explore the history, influence, and what makes this dangerous mafia so formidable in the world today. But before we dive into the details, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Mob Boss for more exciting content. The Black Mafia, a drug trafficking and money laundering organization in the United States, was founded in 1985 in southwest Detroit by brothers Demetrius Edward Big Meech Flannery and Terry Lee Southwest T. Flannery. By 2000, it had established cocaine distribution sales throughout the United States through its Los Angeles-based drug source and direct links to Mexican drug cartels. The Black Mafia family operated from two main hubs, one in Atlanta for distribution run by Demetrius Flannery, and one in Los Angeles to handle incoming shipments from Mexico run by Terry Flannery Christian. They gained power in local neighborhoods by intimidating people to prevent anyone from reporting the group's activities to the police. As a result of this, the police had incredible difficulty taking any action on the gang or any of its members for years after their conception. Over the course of their control, the Black Mafia was responsible for over 40 murders and countless other crimes. Each gang member had extensive arrest records, with the majority of charges related to violent offenses. In the late 2000s, Demetrius Flannery established BMF Entertainment as a promotion agency and record label for hip-hop music. At this time, the Flannery brothers were already known to associate with numerous high-profile hip-hop artists, including Sean Diddy, Trina, T.I., Jay-Z, Young Jeezy, and Fabulous. Demetrius founded BMF Entertainment as a front organization for money laundering the cash generated by the cocaine distribution network, but it also served as an attempt to create a legitimate business and legal source of income. Around this time, the Flannery organization formally adopted the name Black Mafia Family, after previously being unnamed. Indeed, this crime syndicate is known to operate with a level of sophistication that rivals legitimate businesses, making them incredibly difficult to dismantle. Now, let's get into the details as we unveil the names of the bosses who lead these criminal enterprises. At the top of our list is Demetrius Big Meech Flannery. Born in 1968 in Cleveland, Ohio, Demetrius Flannery grew up in a challenging environment that shaped his ambitions. By the late 1980s, he'd moved to Detroit, where he and his brother, Terry Southwest T. Flannery, began their foray into drug trafficking. Initially dealing with small quantities of cocaine, they quickly recognized the potential for greater profits and hence proceeded to form the organization Black Mafia Family. At its peak, the BMF was estimated to have over 500 members and generated revenues exceeding $270 million between 1989 and 2005. Big Meech was not just a drug dealer, he was a visionary. He expanded BMF beyond drugs by launching BMF Entertainment, which served as both a front for money laundering and a legitimate business that promoted hip-hop artists. This duality helped him blend into the glamorous world of music while maintaining his grip on the underworld. However, with great power came great danger. As BMF grew, so did its notoriety. The organization was linked to numerous violent incidents, including murders that sent shockwaves through Atlanta's nightlife. In 2004, a man was shot dead at the Velvet Room nightclub. This incident highlighted BMF's ruthless reputation. The DEA launched Operation Motor City Mafia in the early 2000s, focusing on dismantling this sophisticated network. Wiretaps revealed incriminating conversations among BMF members, detailing their operations and revealing their inner workings. In October 2005, authorities executed a massive raid that resulted in the arrest of 30 BMF members and the seizure of $2 million in cash, along with large quantities of cocaine. The Flenory brothers were charged with multiple offenses under the Continuing Criminal Enterprise statute, and by 2008, both brothers pleaded guilty to running a continuing criminal enterprise and were sentenced to 30 years in prison. Despite their imprisonment, Big Meech's legacy endures. He became a folk hero within certain circles, an emblem of success against all odds. His story's been immortalized in popular culture through the Starz series BMF, which has reignited interest in his life and exploits. Big Meech was both feared and revered. His charisma attracted loyalty but also drew enemies. His escapades included lavish parties attended by celebrities and high-profile figures from the hip-hop community, creating an aura that few could resist but many envied. Today, Big Meech is out of prison, but remains under supervision as he navigates life after incarceration. His influence continues to resonate with hip-hop culture and beyond, a testament to his enduring legacy as one of America's most infamous mob bosses. Number 2 on our list is Lorenzo Fat Cat. In the shadows of Jamaica, Queens, a name echoed through the streets, one that struck fear into the hearts of many and commanded respect from even the most hardened criminals. Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols, a drug lord whose empire thrived in the 1980s, became synonymous with violence and ruthless ambition. Nicholas was born on December 25, 1958 in Birmingham, Alabama. During the 1980s, Nicholas became one of the top drug lords in New York City. He got his nickname because of his linebacker-thick neck, a head so big it nearly blocked out his friends' faces in snapshots, and his rangy beard, according to Ethan Brown's book, Queens Reigns Supreme. Nichols spent his early years in Alabama, where he was raised by his maternal grandmother. Around the age of 10, he moved to Queens, New York to live with his mother, Louisa, and her third husband. Dropping out of school before 9th grade, Nichols started to run with a dangerous crowd. By the age of 18, he was already involved with the notorious Stephen Crown street gang. In 1976, Nichols committed 2 robberies with another young man. He was convicted for both crimes and sentenced to 18 years in jail, but was released in 1980 after serving only 2.5 years. Around this time, Nichols moved on to the more lucrative crime of drug dealing. He was able to get into that business through a Mafia connection. At the time, the Mafia controlled most of the drug trade on the East Coast. Nichols established a network of dealers to work the streets and the housing projects of Southeast Queens. Many members of Nichols' crew were close family relatives, including his mother and 2 of his sisters. Brian Glaze Gibbs was another trusted associate, as was Joseph Mike Bones Rogers. A friend from prison, Howard Pappy Mason, was also a key part of Nichols' operation. His headquarters was Big Mac's Deli, a business he and his wife Joanne took over from her father. On July 29, 1985, Nichols found himself back in police custody after a raid on Big Mac's Deli. The police caught him with 2 guns. The search also netted $180,000 in cash and varying amounts of heroin, cocaine, and marijuana. Charged with gun and drug possession, Nichols was able to get out on bail. He was soon arrested again by his parole officer, Brian Rooney, for violating his parole. Angry to be back in jail, Nichols ordered a few of his associates to rough up Rooney. Rooney was shot to death on October 10th. He was indicted on charges of second-degree murder for the killing of Rooney in July 1987. At a trial later, Nichols insisted that he never intended for Rooney to be killed. From behind bars, Nichols continued running his drug operation and dealing harshly with those who went against him. Detectives who worked on these cases described Nichols as one of the most dangerous men they encountered. His ability to orchestrate killings from behind bars showcased not only his ruthlessness, but also his cunning nature. He later admitted to ordering the murders of 2 people. In 1986, Isaac Bolden was shot and killed by Nichols' associates after he and a few others robbed Nicole's then-girlfriend, Carolyn Tyson. Nichols' former girlfriend, Myrtle Maisha Horsham, also met a grisly fate after she took money from his drug operation. It didn't even matter that she and Nichols had a child together, a son named TC. In December 1987, Horsham and a friend were shot several times by members of Nichols' crew. The friend lived, but Horsham died of her injuries. TC was with Horsham at the time of the shooting and was later dropped off in his maternal grandmother's yard. Nichols later stated that he had Horsham killed because she was my girl and she took my money and spent it on another person, according to a report in the New York Times. Nichols soon found his own family under siege. His wife was kidnapped in May 1987 and held for ransom. After paying off the kidnappers, she was released. The kidnappers were later apprehended. Other members of his family were not so fortunate. In May 1988, the home of Louise Coleman, Nichols' mother, was firebombed. His mother and stepfather escaped unharmed, but his half-sister Mary died in the fire. By that time, however, Nichols had been convicted of several counts of drug-related and weapons-related crimes, including the cold-blooded murder of police officer Edward Byrne in February 1988 by his associate Mason. This created a public outcry, and as a result, the authorities turned up the heat on Nichols' operation. In 1992, Nichols pleaded guilty to the murder charges related to Rooney's death. He was given 25 years to life in prison for that crime. Around that time, Nichols pleaded guilty to federal drug-related charges and racketeering-related murder charges and subsequently received a sentence of 40 years in prison. The sentence was to be served concurrently with the state charges. While he could have been facing life in prison for the federal charges, Nichols was given a lighter sentence for agreeing to cooperate with the authorities. His main motivation behind this decision may have been to help his mother and girlfriend, both facing charges related to their role in his drug business, receiving lighter sentences. Nichols is currently serving his time in the New York State Corrections System. In 2010, the New York Daily News published a letter that Nichols had written the publication from his prison cell. "I have nothing but time to ponder my misdeeds," Nichols wrote, adding, "To the victims of my criminal activities, I offer my deepest regret and sincerest apology." But even behind bars, Fat Cat remained influential, ordering hits on rivals and maintaining control over his drug operations until authorities finally cracked down on him. Nichols is not just a criminal mastermind, but a man who embodies the darker side of urban America in the 80s. Washington, D.C., in the late 1980s, was a city gripped by fear, where the streets were stained with blood and chaos grew supreme. The city was dominated by one man, a name synonymous with power and terror: Rayful Edmond III. Born on November 26, 1954, Edmond was largely responsible for having introduced crack cocaine into the Washington, D.C. area during the crack epidemic, resulting in an escalating crime rate in the city, which became known as the murder capital of the United States. Rayful was public enemy number one in his hometown of Washington, D.C., during his reign as the city's top cocaine and crack dealer in the 1980s. At the height of Dodge City's deadly crack epidemic in 1987, the 22-year-old was in charge of distributing 60% of the cocaine that flooded the city's streets. In Chocolate City, Rayful was the unquestioned cocaine king. He was street royalty, with a proven gangster record. At the time, Rayful had drug transactions between 1,000 and 2,000 kilos per week in 1992 with the Trujillo Blanco brothers, who were associated with the Medellin cartel. And he sold the drugs to Washington area wholesalers every week, making about $70 million in gross revenue per month and approximately $300 million annually. In his early 20s, he established himself as the city's most known drug kingpin. Following his high-profile and luxurious existence, champagne flowed like water. Vacations to Las Vegas, New York, and Los Angeles were usual, and $50,000 shopping sprees were the norm. Rayful personified the big city drug kingpin, and his size embodied all of the praises that position required. To the mainstream media, he embodied all that was wrong with the city's crack epidemic. But in the streets, Rayful was a hero, an inner-city gangster who rose to the top echelons of the drug trade. However, his reign was not without consequences, as his meteoric rise coincided with an extraordinary surge of street violence and drug addiction in the capital city. Over the years, Raffel's been accused of the crack storm that engulfed D.C., but he insisted that he was merely attempting to help his family live a better life and enjoy the finer materialistic trappings of capitalism that were sometimes denied to ghetto residents. Raffel was beloved, if not worshipped, by block huggers, four-corner hustlers, and hood mainstays alike. His popularity transcended boundaries, and he was adored by both youngsters and adults. Others, however, feared him, seeing him as a man who caused chaos in his neighborhood. Raffel maintained his legacy of being a notorious gangster legend of epic proportions until he tarnished this legacy by turning snitch. Edmond was arrested on April 15, 1989, at the age of 24. His arrest and subsequent trial were widely covered by local and national media. Judicial officials, fearful of reprisals from members of Edmond's gang, imposed unprecedented security during the trial. Jurors' identities were kept secret before, during, and after the trial, and their seating area was enclosed in bulletproof glass. The presiding judge even barred the public from the trial in an effort to protect the jury. Edmond was jailed at the maximum security Marine Corps Brig at Marine Corps Base Quantico in Virginia, and flown to the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. by helicopter each day for his trial. Authorities took this unusual step due to heightened fears of an armed escape attempt. He was eventually convicted of numerous federal violations on September 17, 1990. The district court imposed sentences of mandatory life without parole on count 1, life without parole on counts 2 and 5, 60 months on count 11, and 48 months on counts 14, 15, 16, and 18. Edmond was eventually sentenced to life in prison without parole. His mother, Constance Bootsy Perry, was also sentenced to 14 years in prison for participating in his criminal enterprise. Several of his sisters and cousins also received sentences. In 1996, federal authorities revealed that Edmond had become a government informant. With Edmond's cooperation, the government arrested 11 alleged drug dealers working in Washington, D.C. In exchange, federal prosecutors agreed to seek a reduced sentence for Edmond's mother. Edmond is still incarcerated, but is now part of the United States Federal Witness Protection Program. The prison where he's held has not been disclosed by the government. In 2019, Edmond returned to D.C. for hearings on whether his life sentence should be reduced to time served based on the information he provided to authorities concerning 20 homicides. At the time, a survey by the District of Columbia Attorney General showed that half of D.C. residents thought Edmond should be released. In 2021, Judge Emmett granted the government's request for early release, although Edmond has a separate 30-year sentence for running his operation from prison. On July 31, 2024, Edmond was transferred from prison to a halfway house at an undisclosed location in Kentucky or Tennessee under the supervision of the Bureau of Prisons' Nashville Residential Reentry Management Office. As he steps back into society after decades in prison, questions linger about the impact of his reign and the scars left on the city he once ruled. As we look at the landscape of organized crime in 2024, it's clear that black mafia bosses are not relics of the past. They are formidable players shaping our present reality. If you found this exploration into the world of black mafia bosses intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification button. Also, share your thoughts below on which boss you think poses the biggest threat today. See you in the next video. The Black Mafia family story didn't end with their arrest. Whispers of active BMF bosses still echo through the streets. Are there still Black Mafia bosses calling the shots? And who are the key players keeping the BMF name alive? The Black Mafia family, BMF, is one of the most famous drug organizations in America. At its peak, BMF made millions by running a nationwide cocaine distribution network. Its leaders, Demetrius Big Meech Flannery and Terry Southwest T. Flannery, turned their drug empire into a cultural phenomenon. They built connections in the hip-hop world, creating a legacy that still influences music and pop culture today. This video will explore BMF's history and focus on the key people who played major roles in the organization. We'll also look at what they're up to now. From Big Meech's leadership to Southwest T's strategy, and from trusted lieutenants to logistics experts, BMF's story is full of fascinating characters. Big Meech, the founding visionary. Demetrius Big Meech Flannery, co-founder of the Black Mafia family, BMF, was the visionary force behind the organization. With his brother, Terry Southwest T. Flannery, Big Meech built an empire that not only dominated the drug trade, but also left a lasting mark on hip-hop culture and American society. From the beginning, Big Meech stood out as a charismatic and ambitious leader. While Terry focused on operations and logistics, Meech dreamed of something bigger. He envisioned BMF not just as a criminal organization, but as a cultural powerhouse. Under his leadership, BMF expanded its influence beyond the streets and into the music industry, creating a brand that resonated with the youth and became synonymous with power, wealth, and success. Expanding beyond the streets. Big Meech's strategic thinking was instrumental in BMF's rise. He recognized the potential aligning with the burgeoning hip-hop scene in the early 2000s. By forming relationships with prominent artists like Jeezy and fostering connections in the music industry, he made BMF a household name. The organization sponsored lavish parties, drove luxury cars, and sported designer clothes, all while maintaining an air of mystique. BMF Entertainment, a record label Meech helped establish, was more than a business venture. It was a platform to legitimize BMF's image. It served as a bridge between the underground world and mainstream culture. Through music videos, concerts, and partnerships, Big Meech showcased BMF's opulence and created an aspirational image for many. This blend of business acumen and showmanship solidified his legacy. In 2005, the empire Big Meech built came crashing down. Federal authorities arrested him and Terry, charging them with running a drug trafficking operation that distributed thousands of kilograms of cocaine across the United States. Both brothers were sentenced to 30 years in prison, effectively ending BMF's reign. Despite the conviction, Big Meech's name didn't fade into obscurity. Instead, it gained a mythic quality. Stories of his leadership, resilience, and larger-than-life personality continued to circulate, especially in hip-hop. Artists like Rick Ross immortalized him in songs, with the track BMF, Blowin' Money Fast, becoming an anthem that celebrated Meech's influence. Even from prison, Big Meech's influence remains strong. His letters and interviews reveal a man who's reflective yet unyielding in his commitment to his legacy. He often shares messages of resilience, ambition, and unity, inspiring those who still admire him. For many, Meech represents a paradox, a man who built an empire through illicit means, but also demonstrated unmatched vision and leadership. Meech has also supported efforts to share the BMF story in a way that captures both its rise and its cautionary tale. The Star series, BMF, which dramatizes the Flannery brothers' journey, has brought renewed attention to his life and the organization's history. Through the show and continued cultural references, Big Meech remains a central figure in conversations about ambition, loyalty, and the cost of power. His ability to lead, inspire loyalty, and blend the worlds of crime and entertainment made him a legend. Southwest T, the other half of the empire. Terry Southwest T. Flannery, alongside his brother, Demetrius Big Meech Flannery, co-founded the Black Mafia family, BMF, creating one of the most powerful drug trafficking empires in U.S. history. While Big Meech was the charismatic leader who thrived in the spotlight, Southwest T was the mastermind behind the scenes, ensuring the organization's day-to-day operations ran smoothly. Southwest T's approach to leadership was different from his brother's. He was known for being more low-key and cautious, focusing on strategy and organization rather than the flashy, public lifestyle Meech embraced. This complementary dynamic allowed BMF to thrive. Big Meech brought in connections, particularly within the entertainment world, while Southwest T kept the machine running efficiently. He managed logistics, coordinated shipments, and maintained relationships with suppliers and distributors. His meticulous attention to detail was key to ensuring the organization's success. The rise of BMF under Southwest T. In the early days of BMF, Terry played a crucial role in establishing the foundation of their operations. The Flannery brothers built a distribution network that spanned multiple states, moving massive amounts of cocaine across the country. Southwest T's focus on discretion and structure helped BMF avoid detection for years. As the organization grew, so did its profits, and Southwest T's cautious approach became increasingly important. While Big Meech's extravagant lifestyle drew attention, Terry preferred to operate in the shadows, avoiding unnecessary risks. This divide in leadership styles occasionally led to tension between the brothers, but it also ensured that BMF's operations were balanced. Prison and release. In 2005, both brothers were arrested and sentenced to 30 years in federal prison for their roles in leading the BMF. However, in 2020, Terry was granted an early release on compassionate grounds due to health concerns and the COVID-19 pandemic. His release brought renewed attention to his life and raised questions about his future. Since his release, Southwest T has kept a relatively low profile compared to his brother, who remains incarcerated. However, rumors about his post-prison activities abound. Some speculate that Terry has turned over a new leaf, focusing on legitimate business ventures and leaving his criminal past behind. Others believe he might still have connections to the remnants of BMF, though there's no concrete evidence to support this. Terry's release has also sparked significant public interest, partly due to the Starz series BMF, which dramatizes the rise and fall of the Flannery brothers. While Big Meech's larger-than-life persona often dominates the narrative, Southwest T's role in building the empire is equally critical. Though he may no longer be involved in illegal activities, Southwest T's name is still tied to BMF's legacy. Whether he's focused on legitimate businesses or simply enjoying a quieter life, Terry remains a symbol of the organization's rise and fall. His story highlights the duality of leadership within BMF, the balance between charisma and caution, ambition and restraint. Today, he serves as a reminder of the lasting impact BMF had on American culture and the enduring fascination with its story. Chad J-Bo Brown, the trusted second-in-command. Chad J-Bo Brown was one of the most important figures in the Black Mafia family, BMF, second only to its founders, Demetrius Big Meech Flannery and Terry Southwest T. Flannery. As the organization's second-in-command, J-Bo played a crucial role in overseeing operations and ensuring that BMF's sprawling empire ran efficiently. His leadership and strategic thinking were vital to the group's ability to maintain control over its massive drug distribution network. J-Bo's responsibilities included managing key personnel, overseeing day-to-day operations, and ensuring that the organization remained profitable. While Big Meech was often the public face of the BMF, known for his lavish lifestyle and connections in the entertainment world, J-Bo worked more behind the scenes. He was the glue that held the operation together, handling challenges and keeping the network functioning smoothly even under immense pressure. During BMF's heyday, J-Bo earned a reputation for unwavering loyalty to Big Meech in the organization. He was known for his ability to make quick, calculated decisions and for his calm demeanor under pressure. These qualities made him one of Big Meech's most trusted allies and an indispensable part of the BMF hierarchy. After the fall of BMF, J-Bo, like many others, faced legal troubles. However, compared to some of the higher-profile members of the organization, he managed to keep a relatively low profile. This discretion may have helped him avoid the intense scrutiny faced by others. While details about his current activities are scarce, there is speculation that he may still maintain connections with remnants of the BMF network or be involved in legitimate business ventures. J-Bo's story is a testament to the loyalty and trust that were key to BMF's operations. His dedication to the organization and Big Meech highlights the deep bonds that existed within the group. Even today, J-Bo's name carries weight among those familiar with BMF's history, symbolizing the loyalty and strategic thinking that helped the organization rise to prominence. As one of the most trusted figures in BMF, J-Bo's legacy is intertwined with the story of the organization itself. His contributions to its success and his enduring influence make him a significant part of the BMF narrative, even years after its decline. Omari O-Dog McCree, the logistics specialist. Omari O-Dog McCree was one of the key figures behind the Black Mafia family's BMF smooth and efficient operations. As the logistics specialist, he was responsible for coordinating the movement of vast quantities of drugs and cash across the United States. His role was critical to the organization's success, ensuring that their sophisticated distribution network functioned without a hitch. McCree's expertise in logistics allowed BMF to grow into a nationwide operation, moving products quickly and discreetly to meet the demand. His ability to navigate the complexities of transportation and communication made him a valuable asset to Big Meech and Southwest T. McCree worked behind the scenes, making sure every piece of the puzzle fit perfectly. Without figures like O-Dog, BMF's rise to dominance in the drug trade would have been far more challenging. However, McCree's story took a dramatic and controversial turn when he decided to cooperate with federal authorities during the investigation into BMF. Facing the immense pressure of the law closing in, he chose to testify against the organization, providing details that ultimately led to the conviction of several high-ranking members. His decision to cooperate earned him the label of a snitch among some circles, tarnishing his reputation in the criminal underworld. After serving his sentence, McCree has kept an extremely low profile. Little is known about his life post-incarceration, with no confirmed reports of his current activities or whereabouts. Some speculate that he's distanced himself entirely from his past, while others believe he may still maintain connections in underground circles. The truth, however, remains shrouded in mystery. O-Dog's story highlights the immense pressure and risks associated with operating in such a high-stakes criminal world. While his decision to cooperate with authorities damaged his standing within the organization and among its loyalists, it also underscores the difficult choices individuals face when their freedom is at stake. His testimony undoubtedly contributed to the downfall of BMF, but it also serves as a reminder of the cost of loyalty and the fragility of trust in the world of organized crime. Despite the controversy surrounding his actions, Omari O-Dog McCree's contributions to BMF's success cannot be overlooked. His strategic mind and logistical expertise played a crucial role in building one of the most notorious drug empires in American history. Other key players of BMF. The Black Mafia family, BMF, wasn't built by just Demetrius Big Meech Flannery and Terry Southwest T. Flannery. The organization's success came from a vast network of individuals who played critical roles in maintaining its power, influence, and operations. Some of these players remain shrouded in mystery, with their current whereabouts and activities left to speculation. Let's delve into a few notable figures. Eric Slim Bivens, the enforcer. Eric Slim Bivens was one of the BMF's most trusted enforcers, someone who ensured that loyalty was maintained and any threats to the organization were dealt with swiftly. Slim was known for his unflinching dedication and his ability to protect the Flannery brothers' empire at all costs. Stories of Slim describe him as a figure who inspired both respect and fear, someone who could resolve conflicts quickly and decisively. After BMF's downfall, Slim's name faded into obscurity. His current status is a topic of debate. Some reports suggest that Slim left his old life behind and is now living quietly, far removed from the high-stakes world of BMF. Others speculate that his loyalty to the organization might still tie him to its remnants, operating in the shadows. While there's no concrete information, Slim's role in BMF's history cements him as a vital figure in its rise to power. Fleming Ill Daniels, the strategist. Fleming Ill Daniels was another prominent member of BMF, recognized for his intelligence and strategic thinking. Ill wasn't just a trusted associate. He was a mastermind behind some of the organization's most significant operations. Known for his calm demeanor under pressure, Ill was often tasked with managing high-stakes situations, ensuring smooth operations even when the odds were stacked against him. Ill's ability to navigate complex challenges made him an invaluable asset to BMF. His work behind the scenes allowed the organization to maintain its dominance in the drug trade while avoiding unnecessary risks. Despite his critical contributions, much like Slim, Ill has largely disappeared from public view since the collapse of BMF. Rumors persist about his activities. Some say he's moved on to legitimate ventures, while others believe he might still hold ties to underground networks. The unsung contributors. Beyond the high-profile members, BMF thrived because of its vast network of individuals who contributed in various capacities. From street-level dealers to logistics coordinators, every person played a role in building and maintaining the empire. One such figure was William Doc Marshall, a key lieutenant who handled significant amounts of money and ensured smooth financial operations. Doc's role in managing the organization's finances allowed BMF to function like a corporate entity, keeping cash flow steady and avoiding unnecessary scrutiny. Another name often mentioned is Bruce Hustle Martin, known for his deep connections within the music industry. Hustle helped BMF expand its influence beyond the drug trade, solidifying its presence in the hip-hop world. This dual approach of street dominance and cultural relevance made BMF a unique force that was hard to ignore. The present-day mystique. Many of these individuals have managed to keep their lives private, adding to the mystique surrounding BMF. Some have reportedly transitioned into legitimate careers, using their past connections and skills in new ways. Others are thought to be still connected to what remains of BMF, keeping the organization's legacy alive in underground circles. The secrecy surrounding these figures is partly what makes BMF's story so fascinating. While some members have stepped into the spotlight, either through media portrayals or public appearances, many remain ghosts, their names whispered in stories about the organization's heyday. Their combined efforts show that BMF's success wasn't just about its leaders. It was about a network of loyal and skilled individuals working together to create something larger than themselves. As the legacy of BMF continues to captivate the public, these lesser-known players remain an integral part of its narrative, representing the depth and complexity of one of America's most infamous organizations. BMF's current state. The Black Mafia family, BMF, may have been dismantled, but its influence remains strong even in 2025. The story of BMF has transcended its criminal origins to become a cultural phenomenon, continuing to shape music, entertainment, and public discourse. One of the most visible aspects of BMF's enduring legacy is the Starz television series BMF. Premiering in 2021 and still capturing audiences in 2025, the series dramatizes the rise and fall of the Flenory brothers and their empire. By blending fact with fiction, the show has reignited public interest in BMF's history. It portrays not only the criminal activities, but also the human side of the story: brotherhood, ambition, and the high stakes of the drug trade. This mix has fascinated viewers, leading to debates about how much of the story is glamorized versus rooted in reality. In the music industry, BMF's influence is still palpable. Numerous hip-hop artists continue to reference Big Meech and the organization in their lyrics, celebrating their larger-than-life image. Songs like Rick Ross's BMF, Blowin' Money Fast, have immortalized the name, making it synonymous with wealth, power, and ambition. Big Meech's status as a cultural icon remains intact, with his name often evoking admiration or intrigue, depending on who you ask. Despite its cultural impact, questions linger about the remnants of the organization. Some rumors suggest that smaller factions of BMF might still be active, operating discreetly under the radar. Others believe the group's power and influence have completely faded, with no significant activities tied to the original network. The truth remains unclear, but the speculation itself is a testament to the organization's mystique. Beyond its criminal exploits, BMF's legacy inspires discussions about broader themes like loyalty, ambition, and the consequences of the drug trade. The organization's rise to power, its sophisticated operations, and its eventual downfall highlight the beauty and dangers of a life built on crime. It's a story that continues to captivate audiences, blending elements of tragedy, ambition, and moral complexity. In 2025, BMF stands as both a cautionary tale and a symbol of resilience and cultural significance. Its story reminds us of the fine line between myth and reality, ensuring that BMF's name will remain a part of history for years to come. The Black Mafia family story is a mix of myth and reality. Its leaders, Big Meech and Southwest T, built an empire that left a lasting mark on both the streets and pop culture. From trusted allies like J-Bo to logistics experts like O-Dog, each member played a role in BMF's rise. But with their downfall came questions about what's left of the organization. Are remnants still operating, or has BMF become just a story of the past? The Star series and hip-hop references keep the myth alive, but the reality is much more complex. As we reflect on BMF's legacy, it's clear that their influence will not be forgotten. What do you think about their story? Do you know any other active members? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Mob Boss for more deep dives into fascinating histories. Black mob bosses rose from tough circumstances to build criminal empires and shape history. Their stories of power, ambition, and influence go beyond crime. Behind the headlines are tales of calculated moves, daring rivalries, and unexpected acts of loyalty that made them unforgettable. Nicky Barnes, Harlem's Mr. Untouchable. Nicky Barnes was one of the most notorious figures in Harlem during the 1970s. He was known as Mr. Untouchable because of his remarkable ability to avoid capture by law enforcement. Barnes built an empire around the heroin trade and became one of the most powerful criminals of his time. His organization, called the Council, controlled much of the heroin distribution in Harlem, and it had ties to the Mafia, which gave him significant influence in the world of organized crime. Barnes started his life in crime at an early age. He grew up in Harlem, and as a young man, joined a street gang. During this time, he developed a serious heroin addiction, which would later play a central role in his life. In 1950, Barnes was arrested for possessing a hypodermic needle, signaling the beginning of his troubled relationship with the law. Soon after, he was arrested again, this time for carrying burglary tools. He was convicted of breaking into cars, which earned him a 3-year sentence at the Manhattan Office of Corrections, better known as the Tombs. Barnes was released from prison in 1954, but his time behind bars did little to change his criminal ways. He returned to the streets, once again getting involved in drug dealing. In 1959, he was caught on a drug charge and sentenced to 5 years in Greenhaven State Prison. While in prison, Barnes became friends with Matty Madonna, a notorious figure in the Mafia. Both men were involved in drug trade, and they reportedly exchanged information about their illegal activities. Barnes was released in 1962 and began expanding his underground drug operation. So, how did Nicky Barnes earn the nickname Mr. Untouchable? In the 1970s, he managed to avoid prosecution despite several run-ins with the law. In 1974, for example, he was arrested in connection with the murder of Clifford Haynes, the brother of Guy Fisher's girlfriend. She had stolen money from the council, and Haynes was killed in an attempt to get information from him about his sister's whereabouts. However, Barnes was never convicted of this crime. Later that year, Barnes was again in trouble with the police. In December 1974, officers pulled over his car and discovered more than $130,000 in cash. They claimed that Barnes tried to bribe him, although Barnes denied the accusation. In 1975, he was acquitted of both the bribery charge and the murder charge related to Haynes' death. However, in 1976, he was arrested again, this time for possession of illegal weapons after being pulled over with some of his associates. Despite these repeated encounters with the law, Barnes continued to live a lavish lifestyle, often flaunting his wealth through expensive clothing and luxurious living. His fame and ability to avoid capture led to his infamous nickname, Mr. Untouchable. However, Barnes' luck eventually ran out. In 1978, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was sent to the Marion Federal Penitentiary in Illinois to serve his sentence. Desperate to reduce his time in prison, Barnes decided to cooperate with the authorities. He agreed to testify against some of his former associates, including Guy Fisher. His testimony helped the government dismantle the council, bringing down much of his criminal empire. In exchange for his cooperation, Barnes entered the Witness Protection Program after serving some time in prison. This marked the end of his once prominent position in the world of crime. Barnes went from being a feared and respected figure in Harlem to living in hiding, his life now under constant protection. If you're enjoying this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the thumbs up button. Frank Lucas, the Harlem Kingpin. Frank Lucas, perhaps the most notorious of all, became an icon in Harlem in the 1970s, known for controlling one of the most lucrative heroin trafficking operations in U.S. history. His story has been immortalized in the film American Gangster, and for good reasons. Lucas, who was originally from North Carolina, took over the heroin business in Harlem after the assassination of his mentor, Ellsworth Bumpy Johnson. Lucas's cunning strategy of smuggling heroin directly from Southeast Asia, hidden in the coffins of dead Americans during the Vietnam War, was both bold and brilliant. His product, Blue Magic, was considered the purest heroin available on the streets, flooding the market and making him a multimillionaire. His empire reached far beyond just drugs. Lucas had strong ties to law enforcement and political figures, claiming he owned the police. He was a master manipulator, able to stay several steps ahead of both rival drug lords and authorities. However, his downfall came in the late 1970s when Detective Richie Roberts led an investigation that eventually brought him down. Despite his fall, Frank Lucas's name lives on, a symbol of both cunning and ambition in the face of overwhelming odds. Jeff Fort, the Black P. Stones and beyond. Jeff Fort was a product of the tough streets of Chicago, specifically the South Side, where he grew up in a community plagued by poverty and systemic oppression. His rise to power began in the late 1950s when he formed the Black P. Stones, initially a street gang with a focus on community protection. As the gang grew, Fort transformed it into a significant criminal organization with a nationwide reach. Fort's operations were vast, from controlling the drug trade to using his influence to push a blend of activism and criminal enterprise. His rise to prominence was largely due to his strategic acumen and ability to unite rival gangs under his banner. Not only was he feared for his criminal activities, but he was also respected for his community leadership. However, his criminal empire came to an end when he was arrested and sentenced to prison. Despite his incarceration, Fort's legacy as a ruthless and strategic figure in Chicago's criminal history remains intact. Felix the Cat Mitchell. Felix Mitchell's rise to power in Oakland, California during the 1980s is well known in criminal history. As the leader of the infamous 69 mob, Mitchell became one of the most powerful drug lords of his time, controlling a huge network that distributed cocaine and crack. His ability to avoid law enforcement earned him the nickname Felix the Cat. He built his empire by dominating Oakland's drug trade, especially during the crack cocaine epidemic. Mitchell made millions from the sales of drugs, and his influence stretched beyond Oakland as he began to form connections with drug kingpins from other cities like Los Angeles and Detroit, Michigan. However, Mitchell's rise was not without challenges. He had to face rival groups such as Mickey Moore's criminal family and the Funktown USA gang led by Harvey Washington. These gangs were competing for control of the East Bay heroin market. Despite these challenges, Mitchell's drug empire continued to grow, and at its peak, it was estimated that he was earning anywhere from $400,000 to $1 million per month. With this money, Mitchell lived an extravagant lifestyle. He threw lavish parties, bought expensive cars, and wore fancy clothes. But he didn't keep all of his wealth to himself. Mitchell was known for giving back to the local community and donating money to youth programs and other organizations in Oakland. This made him a popular figure, and many people in the area saw him as sort of a folk hero. To maintain control over his territory, the 69 mob used a variety of methods that have since become common in the modern drug trade. They used children as runners and lookouts, as well as drive-by shootings to punish enemies and clients who didn't follow orders. By the 1980s, Mitchell's drug empire had expanded massively, and it became a prime target for law enforcement. Violence and conflict became a regular part of his operations as he fought to keep control over his business. Given his high profile and his role in the drug trade, Mitchell eventually became a target for local police. In 1985, Oakland police arrested him, and he was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life in prison. However, Mitchell's story didn't end there. In 1986, while serving his sentence at Leavenworth Penitentiary, he was murdered by a fellow inmate. Mitchell died just 2 days before his 32nd birthday. His death shocked many, and his funeral attracted widespread attention. Mitch's funeral took place on August 29, 1986, over a week after his death. The funeral procession was a spectacle, with 4 Rolls Royces, multiple limousines, a horse-drawn carriage, and a $6,000 coffin. Approximately 8,000 people gathered to pay their respects, making the event a powerful reflection of the influence Mitchell had gained. The lavish funeral and the large crowd drew national attention, with many law enforcement officials pointing to it as a stark example of the negative impact of drugs on American society, particularly in poor neighborhoods like those in Oakland. Despite his criminal activities, Mitchell became a figure of fascination, and his story continues to be remembered in the history of American organized crime. Larry Hoover, the gangster disciple. Larry Hoover is a name that carries great weight in Chicago, especially in the world of street gangs. As the leader of the gangster disciples, Hoover played a key role in turning the gang into one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the United States. His journey to power began when he became a leader within the Supreme Gangsters. Later, he formed an alliance with rival gang leader David Barksdale, and together they created the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. In 1969, after Barksdale was injured in a shooting, Hoover took full control of the Gangster Disciples. Under Hoover's leadership, the Gangster Disciples expanded their criminal empire. They took control of the drug trade on Chicago's South Side, making over $1,000 a day in profits. Hoover turned what was once a small street gang into a powerful organization that became involved in everything from drug trafficking to racketeering, violence, and even political activism. He was known for his strong leadership and ability to inspire loyalty, but also for his ruthless enforcement of his orders. By the time Hoover was in his early 20s, he'd already spent time in prison several times and survived at least 6 attempts on his life. However, it wasn't until 1973 that he was finally caught. Hoover and another gangster disciple, Andrew Howard, were charged with the murder of drug dealer William Young. The 2 men were sentenced to 150 to 200 years in prison. Hoover was sent to Statesville Correctional Center, a maximum security prison in Crest Hill, Illinois. Even while incarcerated, Hoover's power continued to grow. Inside Stateville, he began to protect other inmates, who soon became loyal followers and new recruits for the gangster disciples. His influence over the prison population was recognized by prison officials, who began to see Hoover as a leader who could help prevent riots and maintain order within the facility. Hoover's ability to maintain control and create a sense of order in such a dangerous environment solidified his reputation as a powerful figure, both in prison and in the world of organized crime. While in prison, Hoover also began to focus on community programs and reform efforts. He worked to create positive change in the lives of others, which earned him respect from both inmates and some outside supporters. Despite being locked away, Hoover's influence on street gangs in Chicago and his role in the rise of black mob bosses remained strong. In 1995, after a lengthy undercover investigation, Hoover was indicted on drug conspiracy charges. He was moved from Stateville to the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Chicago to stand trial. He was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to 6 life sentences. Today, Hoover is serving his sentence at the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility in Florence, Colorado, where he remains one of the most infamous figures in American gang history. Bumpy Johnson, the godfather of Harlem. Ellsworth Raymond Bumpy Johnson is perhaps the most legendary figure in Harlem's criminal history. A savvy businessman and a sharp-dressed figure, Bumpy rose to prominence in the early to mid-20th century. He became involved in a variety of illicit activities, including gambling, racketeering, and numbers running during the Prohibition era. Unlike many mob bosses, Bumpy's rise was not purely based on violence. His sharp mind and ability to work within the confines of Harlem's complex social dynamics helped him carve out a niche that would later earn respect from both the black community and rival crime families. Bumpy Johnson was not only a criminal mastermind, but also a community leader. He was known for his generosity, particularly during Harlem's difficult economic times, and was revered by those who benefited from his goodwill. His partnership with the Italian Mafia, his charisma, and his respect for others in the criminal world made him a force to be reckoned with. His legacies lived on, immortalized in books, films, and the popular television series Godfather of Harlem. Take a moment to join the Mob Boss family by hitting that subscribe button and smashing the thumbs up. Your support fuels our mission to bring you even more epic stories and content. Jamaica Thompson Hairston. Often referred to as Queenie, Thompson is the only woman on this list of black mob bosses. She became one of the most powerful figures in organized crime during the 1980s and 1990s, controlling a large network involved in drug trafficking and money laundering. Known for her sharp intelligence and strong business skills, Queenie Thompson earned a respected place as a queen pin in the criminal underworld. Thompson's journey to the top was not easy. She was evicted from her home at a young age, and this motivated her to find ways to make money quickly. She partnered with an older man, Anthony M. Daff Mosley, and together they began running a successful cocaine trafficking business in Los Angeles. The partnership grew stronger, and they eventually married and had a son named Anthony. After some time in the drug business, Thompson and Daff decided to expand their operation by switching from cocaine to the more in-demand drug, crack cocaine. Unfortunately, their success was short-lived, as tragedy struck when Daff was killed while washing his car. Though devastated by the loss, Thompson didn't give up. She continued to build on the business she'd started with Daff, making new connections and expanding into new territories across the United States. Around this time, she also invested in an LA-based hair business, selling hair to celebrities and holding shows to promote her products. Her criminal operations grew larger, and she became a respected figure in the streets, admired by both men and women in the drug trade. Despite the challenges of being a woman in a male-dominated world, Thompson's intelligence and strategic thinking helped her manage her multi-million-dollar drug deals. She earned a fearsome reputation for her ability to stay untouchable, outsmarting law enforcement and her rivals. Thompson's empire continued to grow as she handled larger operations and made deals that made her a major player in the criminal underworld. In 1993, after being on the run for 2 years, Thompson decided to return to Los Angeles for her son's 6th grade graduation. Law enforcement, suspecting she might show up, was waiting for her at the event. She was arrested and later convicted on drug trafficking charges, receiving a 15-year prison sentence. Thompson served 13 years in a maximum security prison alongside infamous figures like Griselda Blanco and Squeaky Fromm. She was released in 2005 after serving most of her sentence. Her life as a criminal boss is remembered as a remarkable story of resilience, intelligence, and power in a world dominated by men. Casper Holstein, the lottery king of Harlem. Casper Holstein, a lesser-known but equally important figure, made his mark as a Harlem mobster during the Prohibition era. Holstein, originally from the Virgin Islands, became known as the Lottery King for his operation of illegal lotteries in Harlem. While many mobsters relied on violence, Holstein used his business savvy to build his empire, creating a network that helped Harlem's impoverished residents. Holstein's operation, which exploited loopholes in the legal system, allowed him to amass a fortune. Holstein was also known for his philanthropic efforts, investing in education and social programs in Harlem. Despite his criminal activities, he earned the respect of the community, making him one of the most unique figures in the history of black mob bosses. Guy Thomas Fisher. Guy Thomas Fisher was a key player in the Harlem drug scene during the crack epidemic of the 1980s. Known for his fierce confrontations with the Italian Mafia, Fisher's story is one of ambition and survival. Born in 1947, Fisher entered the criminal world with a determination to control Harlem streets. His leadership during the crack cocaine boom established him as one of the most feared men in New York's underworld. Fisher's dealings expanded beyond street-level drugs, and his reputation grew as he took on larger organized crime families. Frank Matthews, the Black Caesar. Frank Matthews, also known as the Black Caesar, was one of the most elusive and most mysterious black mob bosses in history. Matthews built his narcotics empire from the ground up, establishing a network that stretched from the East Coast to the Midwest in the late 1960s and early 1970s. His ability to stay one step ahead of law enforcement made him a near mythical figure in the drug trade. In 1973, Matthews vanished without a trace, leaving behind a legacy that continues to intrigue and mystify. His disappearance has led to numerous theories, but the one thing that remains certain is that Matthews' influence on the criminal underworld of the 1970s was monumental. These 10 black mob bosses were criminals in the eyes of the law, yet their power and influence cannot be denied. Rising from adversity, they used their wits, charisma, and determination to dominate the criminal underworld. Their legacies are a mix of ruthless ambition and complicated respect for their communities that reshaped organized crime and left an indelible mark on culture and history. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Mob Boss for more incredible stories. See you in the next one. After carrying out so much drug trafficking, racketeering, and murder, they were convicted and jailed forever. But even behind bars, they still control the syndicate network, keeping the drug business running. Or what kind of man from behind bars would order an assault on his parole officer, which ultimately led to the officer being shot in the head? Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols is one such figure. And shockingly, he's far from the only one. Rick Ross is also involved. In this video, we'll unveil more of these figures whose grip on crime hasn't loosened but continues to evolve in 2025. Number 1. Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols. Nichols' early criminal activities led to a conviction for 2 robberies in 1976, resulting in an 18-year sentence, though he served only 2.5 years. Upon release, Nichols capitalized on connections with the Mafia to establish a drug trafficking network that, at its height, generated $20 million annually. Operating out of a Big Mac's deli in Jamaica, Queens, his organization included trusted associates like Howard Pappy Mason and Joseph Mike Bones Rogers. One of the events that made his reign so ruthless and violent was when he ordered the murder of his ex-girlfriend, Myrtle Horsham, the mother of his child. This was after accusing her of stealing from his operation. And in 1985, he orchestrated the killing of his parole officer, Brian Rooney, for reporting him for a violation. While not charged, Nichols was also linked to the 1988 assassination of NYPD officer Edward Byrne, an event that in 3 decades, Nichols was granted parole from state prison in 2022 and transferred to federal custody. In 2023, a judge ruled that he had effectively served his federal sentence, though he still faced the 10-year sentence from Florida. As of 2025, Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols is still behind bars. Though he's expressed remorse for his past actions, the true extent of his transformation remains uncertain. The fact is, even after spending decades in prison, no one can truly predict what his next move might be. Number 2. Freeway Rick Ross. You've probably heard the name Rick Ross thrown around in rap lyrics and celebrity headlines, right? This is not about the chart-topping rapper, but the real Ricky Donnell Freeway Ross, a man who built one of the largest drug empires America has ever seen. This man once moved $3 million worth of cocaine in a single day, with profits that would make Wall Street bankers blush. This isn't fiction. It's a true life story of a man who turned a missed tennis scholarship into a multi-state narcotics empire that spanned 42 cities. Can you imagine being so powerful to gross nearly $900 million before hitting your 30s? That was Freeway Rick Ross in the 1980s. And it all started when he was denied a tennis scholarship due to his illiteracy. But instead of giving up, he found another path, one that took him from the street corners to cartel connections in Nicaragua. But here's the twist. His drug source was from a man with alleged CIA ties linked to the infamous Iran-Contra affair. What an irony. Now, you're probably wondering, how did he pull it off? Ross didn't just sell drugs. He ran an empire with thousands of employees, military-grade surveillance gear, and routes so tight they made law enforcement look like amateurs. Police scanners, voice scramblers, you name it. One sheriff even said, Ross's guys had better equipment than we do. Law enforcement did finally catch up. Ross was hit with a life sentence, but that wasn't even the end. Behind bars, Ross taught himself to read and study the law like his life depended on it. Literally, it did. So he found a loophole, took his case to the appeals court, won, and walked out of prison in 2009. But in 2015, he was stopped with $100,000 in cash, suspected of being involved in drugs again. Ross claimed it was all about a real estate deal and that he was racially profiled. The charges? dropped. Currently, Rick Ross owns Freeway Ricky's, a sleek, 3,000 plus square foot marijuana dispensary in the Sunland area of Los Angeles. The truth is, this is a far cry from the dark, high stakes world of his past. That's what we see though. It appears that he's channeling his entrepreneurial instincts into the legal cannabis industry. But here are the questions. Has Freeway Rick really turned over a new leaf? Or is this simply the legalized, polished evolution of the empire he once ruled from the shadows? That may be a similar story of this drug lord, our number 3, Demetrius Big Meech Flannery. He walked out of prison and immediately organized a welcome home concert featuring a lineup of top rappers. That's not just a homecoming. That's some real-life mafia-level power. Demetrius Big Meech Flannery is another formidable figure whose influence continues to resonate in 2025. Fresh out of federal prison in late 2024, after nearly 2 decades behind bars, Big Meech didn't just return to the streets quietly. He came back in style, stepping straight into a celebration most people couldn't pull off even in their prime. Now, take note, in the 80s and 90s, he and his brother, Terry Southwest T. Flannery, built one of the most powerful drug empires in the United States. What started with selling small bags of cocaine in Detroit grew into a coast-to-coast operation moving thousands of kilos and pulling in over $270 million in revenue. But Meech wasn't just about drugs. He had vision. He created BMF Entertainment, a music label that doubled as a front for his operation and a gateway into hip-hop culture. He was tight with artists like Young Jeezy, T.I., and Diddy. He built a flashy lifestyle that blurred the lines between rap royalty and real-life crime boss. After his 2008 conviction and 30-year sentence, many thought Big Meech was done. But prison didn't erase his name. If anything, it made his legend grow. The Star series, BMF, produced by 50 Cent and starring his own son, Demetrius Lil Meech Flannery Jr., reignited his legacy. Fans ate it up. The story of a young man rising from the streets to run an empire, then using music and fame to tell the story, that hit differently because it was real. Now, in 2025, Big Meech has been released to a residential re-entry program in Miami. His welcome concert, the fanfare, wasn't just hyped. It was the validation of his mafia status. 4. Terry Southwest T. Flannery, his brother. The story has never been just about crime. It's about survival, ambition, family, and legacy. He and Big Meech used their influence and money to build BMF Entertainment. While the label served as a front for laundering drug money, it also became a legitimate business that pushed BMF into the mainstream, blending the glamour of music with the danger of street life. Terry split from Big Meech in 2003 due to growing tension and differences in how the empire was being run. He relocated to Los Angeles to manage his own branch of operations, while Meech held it down in Atlanta. But by then, the DEA was already closing in. He and his brother both pleaded guilty in 2007 to running a continuing criminal enterprise and were handed 30-year federal sentences. For many, that's where the story would have ended, but not for Terry. In May 2020, with COVID-19 spreading in federal prisons, he was granted compassionate release and placed under home confinement. Then, in 2024, his name made headlines again when President Joe Biden granted him clemency, citing reforms and his pandemic-era release. Now, under close supervision at a re-entry center in Detroit, Terry is expected to fully complete his sentence by August 2025. But it may look like a comeback very soon, as he's already making moves and reclaiming attention. These days, he's in a long-term relationship with Tanessa Welch, a fellow figure in BMF history and now a prison reform advocate. He keeps a relatively low profile, but remains connected to the public through social media and cultural relevance, especially with the BMF series on Stars retelling the saga he helped create. Number 5. Fleming Ill Daniels, still a part of the gang. The BMF has had no shortage of bold, unforgettable figures, but few stood out quite like Fleming "Ill" Daniels. While most of the 16 men indicted with Terry and Demetrius in 2007 for their roles in the Black Mafia family's massive cocaine empire chose to plead guilty, Daniels refused to fold. He took his chances in court, becoming the only defendant in the Atlanta case to go to trial. Even without wiretaps or drugs physically caught in his possession, the feds came hard and they made it stick. The case against Daniels relied heavily on the testimonies of former BMF insiders, including William "Doc" Marshall and Ralph Sims, who told the court they personally saw Daniels picking up kilos of cocaine. That was enough. In December 2008, he was convicted and hit with a 20-year federal sentence and a $10,000 fine for his role in the operation. Daniels wasn't just a mid-level guy. He was a major player in a network that helped push the BMF to nationwide dominance. But his legal troubles didn't end there. Daniels was also tied to the 2004 murder of Rochenball Prince Drummond, a case that rocked Atlanta's nightlife scene. Well, this is how it went. The incident started when Drummond slapped the hood of a luxury car outside the Velvet Room nightclub, trying to avoid being run over. That led to a violent confrontation, and that ended in Drummond's death. In February 2010, Daniels pleaded guilty to voluntary manslaughter in the killing and was sentenced to another 20 years, though the sentence is expected to run concurrently with his drug conviction. Don't blink. The deeper we go, the darker it gets. Like and subscribe to keep up. At number 6, Darrell "God" Whiting. He was once a feared and powerful figure in Boston's drug underworld. Originally from the Bronx, he made his way to Massachusetts in the late 1980s and brought with him a ruthless and organized approach to drug dealing. Whiting wasn't just another street-level dealer. He was a strategist. By the time he arrived in Boston, he'd already made a name for himself in New York's crack cocaine scene. But in Boston, he took things to another level. He quickly established dominance in the Orchard Park housing project in Roxbury, creating what became known as the New York Boys. His crew ran like a well-oiled machine, with a strict hierarchy that included lookouts, dealers, security, and enforcers. This wasn't a disorganized street operation. It was a militant-style drug empire. Violence was a tool of the trade. Whiting used it not only to enforce loyalty, but also to eliminate rivals and keep the neighborhood under his control. At the height of his power, his organization was bringing in millions from crack sales. But his reign didn't last. In 1990, after a lengthy federal investigation, Whiting was convicted of running a continuing criminal enterprise and sentenced to life in prison. His trial pulled back the curtain on the brutal world he operated in, with former associates taking the stand and some needing protection afterward due to the dangerous nature of their testimony. Even behind bars, Whiting stirred controversy. While serving his sentence, he published a novel titled "Taking It to Another Level" in the beginning. The book featured a character, also named Darrell "God" Whiting, who, upon being released from prison, reclaims power, rebuilds a criminal empire, and seeks revenge on those who testified against him. Isn't that satirical? Prosecutors argued the book wasn't just fiction. It was a thinly veiled depiction of Whiting's real-life case, complete with portrayals of witnesses and scenarios that resembled actual events. They claimed it showed he remained a threat and had not been rehabilitated. Whiting insisted the novel was fictional, but Judge Patty B. Saris wasn't convinced. In her ruling, she pointed to the novel as evidence that Whiting still harbored the same dangerous mindset that landed him in prison decades earlier. Citing the violence, the glorification of criminal life, and the threats embedded in the story, she concluded that releasing Whiting would endanger the community. As a result, his life sentence stood, unchanged and uncompromised. But for Omar Porti, who is at number 7, it's another story. Not so many people may recognize the name Omar Porti, but in the underworld of organized crime, he looms large as one of the most dangerous and enduring black mafia bosses still alive and active in 2025. Known by the street name OG Mac, Poor T's criminal legacy began in the rough streets of the Bronx and expanded behind prison walls, where he masterminded one of the most notorious prison-to-street gang transformations in American history. While serving time at Rikers Island in 1993, Poor T co-founded the United Blood Nation, a violent collective that exploded out of confinement and entrenched itself in the streets of New York to the West Coast. What began as a bid for protection quickly mutated into a sprawling empire built on violence, drugs, and fear. Poor T's rise wasn't just about brute force. It was about structure, influence, and psychological warfare. Upon his release in 1999, he turned the Bloods into a corporate-style crime syndicate, splitting it into multiple sets with regional control, each loyal to his command. He brought ruthless order to chaos, using teenagers as foot soldiers and unleashing terror across neighborhoods while avoiding direct contact with the crimes themselves. This tactic frustrated law enforcement for years. Operating from the Bronx 183rd Street like a war general, Poor T orchestrated drug rings, armed robberies, and prostitution networks, eliminating competition through violent decrees that made headlines and left bodies in their wake. Though he was convicted in 2002 and sentenced to 50 years in prison, Poor T's impact never fully disappeared. Even from behind the unforgiving walls of ADX Florence, he has reportedly maintained influence over gang operations on the outside through coded letters, loyal lieutenants, and a criminal infrastructure he designed to outlast his imprisonment. OG Mac remains a specter in the American criminal landscape. Now, let's talk about Kenneth Supreme McGriff. Only a few figures in the criminal underworld command the kind of enduring fear and respect as Kenneth Supreme McGriff. Though locked away for life, his legend refuses to die. And according to whispers on the streets and in the dark corners of the web, neither has his reach. McGriff, now in his mid-60s and housed at USP Beaumont in Texas, is still considered one of the most dangerous black mafia bosses in America. The Supreme Team, which he founded in the early 80s in South Jamaica, Queens, wasn't just a gang. It was a militarized empire. With operations that once moved over $200,000 in crack cocaine a day, McGriff proved that a street hustler from the projects could outmaneuver law enforcement and rival crews on prison walls. From coordinating criminal dealings across state lines to allegedly orchestrating retaliatory violence from behind bars, his presence remains a quiet storm in the criminal underworld. Even after decades of incarceration, federal agents continue to monitor potential connections between McGriff and rising drug rings in Maryland and the Carolinas, territories the Supreme Team once infiltrated. With a reputation built on discipline, fear, and a deadly code of silence, Supreme has become a name that still sends shivers through both the streets and the Fed's most secure files. And in 2025, even confined in a high-security cell, Supreme's legend is very much alive. Last but not least, Larry Hoover. Though he may be old, Larry Hoover remains one of the most infamous, influential figures in American street culture. Rising from the rough streets of Chicago, Hoover's life has always been a complex blend of power and notoriety. He dropped out of junior high at just 13 to join the Supreme Gangsters, a crew involved in petty crimes that laid out the foundation for his future dominance in the gang world. But Hoover wasn't just a product of his environment. He became a force that reshaped it. By 1969, he took a bold step in uniting two of Chicago's biggest rival gangs, merging the Supreme Gangsters with David Barksdale's Black Disciples to form the Black Gangster Disciple Nation. That move later shifted the power dynamics on the South Side and rippled across the nation. Despite spending decades behind bars, serving multiple life sentences, Hoover's influence never waned. While incarcerated, he created the Folk Nation, an alliance of gangs that extended his ideological and organizational reach beyond prison walls. His leadership skills allowed him to orchestrate movements, mediate disputes, and even shape the narrative of his legacy. That happened all from a cell. Publicly, he has renounced his past gang affiliations, advocating for growth and development instead of gangster disciple violence. However, many question whether his transformation is sincere or strategic. As you've seen, these are not just men with criminal records. They are living legends of the underworld. Whether they're orchestrating criminal empires from solitary confinement, walking free after decades behind bars, or blurring the line between crime and culture, their stories are far from over. And if you thought that was jaw-dropping, we've only scratched the surface. So make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to Mob Boss, and turn on the notification bell because we've got even more shocking stories coming your way.